The teams won't hook up to them.
I mean, yeah, it's fine.
What's that? You want me to go over the exit? Right here? Yeah. All right, I'll go over that. I'll shut the door for actually sure nobody can go out that door.
Happening. We're starting, right?
We good to go there?
No.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. Everybody, do we have anybody online? Four people online. All right, cool.
Right.
Sorry about the delay here. We had some technical difficulties and a lot of traffic and a bad accident down the road. So
Oh,
just to do some housekeeping items, I'm Chris Colton, chapter president. Emergency exits right out the door here, and shelter in place are the bathrooms behind us. Smaller housekeeping, next Eventbrite will come out in the next day or two. We have a tour at Amway, on May 23 at 8:30 a.m. And then, of course, next month we have our golf outing, June 27. So, we'll put up the QR code at the end. If anybody wants to sign up, there's handouts for that here too. I'd like to introduce, Heather Chapman, Paradigm Safety. So Heather's a performance-driven professional with more than 20 years of experience. She's spoken in multiple areas. You were at the Michigan Safety Conference.
Yeah.
You spoke at a training for West Michigan Industrial Hygiene.
mhm.
So
Yep.
tons of speaking. Let's see, you partnered with numerous organizations, you own Paradigm Safety, and you also have a partnership with
Soda.
Soda.
Yep.
With that said, I've got more here, but I'll just let Heather get going for everybody's time's sake. So thank you very much.
I always enjoy when we have technical issues and we're talking about technology. It just seems to set the tone. We're gonna talk through different. Oh, Zach, it's not adjusting with mine, so it might be you. It's you. Okay. We'll deal. We'll do it. So we're going to talk about technology today, and I'm adjusting the content of our session a bit because in the realm of technology and artificial intelligence, it moves at the speed of light. So things are constantly changing and evolving. And what I want to share today is some new use cases for AI. And it's probably going to make a huge impact in the safety world. So I'm going to discuss it today. You will be the third audience to hear about this new technology. So it's literally just hitting the market in the past couple of weeks. If you see the stat here, my guess is by the end of this year, every single business is going to be using AI in some form. It really does speed up the admin type things that we do. I don't see it replacing people. There's always that concern in the safety world as we talk about AI and technology today. It is not a replacement for us, for risk consultants. It literally is just a tool that we can use. It can enhance the work that we do. It can speed up the work that we do. It doesn't replace us. The marketplace, $2 trillion within the next few years, perhaps more. So AI is going to be significant. And as I mentioned, it's changing very rapidly. Zach, I'm moving on. So the foundation of AI in our realm is data science and machine learning. Now, the AI I'm talking about today uses a technique called RAG, and it's a type of information retrieval system whereby if you're using ChatGPT or any of these other items listed, it just scours any information that's available out there. But in this RAG method, which we're going to talk about today, it uses an authoritative source. So it's not scouring everything. It's going to a specific source in order to pull that and then it can look at other contexts. The source we're using today for this RAG is every single OSHA standard out there, every single OSHA citation that's ever been written, every single OSHA letter of understanding or interpretation letter. This AI system that we'll talk about has been trained on over 11 million tokens. Tokens are these little bits of information. It's how we measure the data inputs into this AI system. So this, it's called Genius, but this Genius is trained on everything under the OSHA umbrella for general industry. It will soon include construction, maritime, and agriculture, as well as ISO, and it does reference ANSI. So if within an OSHA standard, it references anything external, this retrieval system goes to OSHA first, but then it understands, oh, it's referencing ANSI or NFPA. It will then redirect you to that specific standard as well. Next slide. So how are we going to apply this in the realm of injuries and illnesses? Well, globally, the estimate is that we spend or lose $3 trillion on injuries. In the US, we know the industries that generate the most injuries and have those highest average industry recordable rates. Fatalities in the US, they're up a bit from last year. We need to see those decline. And it's hard as safety people to manage all of these. We're talking about SIFs, we're talking about MSDs. How do you actually proactively work towards preventing injuries when we have a million things on our plates? In comes AI. So Zach, if you'll advance, whether we're thinking about compliance or conformance, depending on what standards you're using, if you are ISO 45001 certified, we're looking at conformance. And within the context of that framework, if we look at Plan, Do, Check, Act, we can see each of the sections under 45001. In almost all realms of this process, you could apply AI. Under OSHA safety standards, we can use AI to help us understand the regulation, to summarize the regulation. We can ask it to prepare training content based on 1910.1200. We can ask it to analyze an image and cite any specific standard violations. This past fiscal year for OSHA, we had about 30,000 citations issued and $132 million fined. That's a lot. It makes an impact on many of these small to mid-sized businesses. Probably those larger organizations, it's a slap on the wrist. But nonetheless, businesses of all sizes should be using AI to help automate some of these processes to help us with the compliance side. As safety professionals, is it really a value add for us to be analyzing a policy? You know, a lot of us, once a year, we go through and we review all of our safety policies to make sure that it's still accurate and is it up to date? Why do we want to spend 2, 3, 4 hours reviewing policies? Why not just upload it into an AI software system and ask it, is this compliant with standards that are applicable, and let it do the work for you in 8 seconds? That's a lot more beneficial use of your time. So as an example, Zach, if you can advance, and then I think you're going to need to push play on. Yeah. Is it allowing you? Oh.
Okay.
Well, George, can we switch to my computer? So we talk about, having this AI be a tool in our toolkit. And the reality is how many people in here do some sort of audit? You have to walk around and do a visual inspection. All right, a couple of things. If we find an issue, we usually take a picture because we want to document it, and we probably need to blast it out to a few people to ask for their help in correcting or mitigating the issue. This software, you can take a picture, you can upload it, and it's going to let you know any potential hazards and specifically cite the standard that's in violation, plus suggest corrective actions, plus tell you, hey, businesses have been cited and have been assessed penalties of this. So you're going to get a link that says, okay, XYZ business had this citation in 2014 and they were assessed a $9,000 fine. So all of this is at your fingertips within seconds. Great, here we go. So I uploaded an image and it's basically telling me all of the references. So here, secure storage shall not create a hazard, and it's giving me a specific regulation that's in violation. It's telling me the action needed. And again, telling me, okay, well, here's a violation that's been assessed. And if you need to reference that, you can. Sometimes it's nice when we're talking about making corrective actions to be able to indicate if we fail to correct this, this is the potential penalty we could face. So this type of technology is now available. One thing I'm going to be trying this month, which is going to be really interesting, has everybody seen like Google Glasses or Ray-Ban just created a partnership with Meta? I'm going to be getting a pair of glasses that are now going to allow me audit in real time. So I'm going to wear these glasses and I'm going to walk out, and every hazard that it identifies is going to be feeding into this database. So when I get back to my desk, I'm going to have a giant report prepared for me. So talk about automation and like time saving. So I'm going to beta test this month and we'll see what happens, but I think it's going to be pretty fantastic. It's a tool, and I'm not saying it's always going to be correct. Like I mentioned, AI is a tool for us to use and not a replacement. It's going to analyze hazards and tell us what some of the issues are. It doesn't replace the need for us to still use our safety brains. We still should double check this. I've been working on training this system a lot, and so I give it different images, and I'm trying to understand, does it always cite the exact same things every time? If I upload an image 2-3 times, is it identifying anything new? I'm training it with videos, so as we take videos, I want it to identify everything that it's seeing. So when we look at an image, we see this as a whole, right? And we clearly see that there's water on the walkway there. When AI looks at this, it is taking an analysis of every single pixel. So it's going line by line, pixel by pixel, and reading that image. So it is seeing, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. For AI, this is 15,000 words. So it's taking pixel by pixel analysis and reading a lot more than we ever would, and giving us feedback based on what it's viewing. So an image is a lot faster for AI to analyze. As we start working towards video analysis, as you can imagine, that is a much bigger packet of information to analyze. So that's taking a little bit longer to make it effective and efficient at the video side of this. So I give it an image and I ask it, what are the hazards that are here? What violations exist? And it's going to kick out for me a variety of issues. It pulled out an electrical issue because it saw cables next to the water bath, which is great. Now that tells me, okay, there's an electrical issue. Honestly, I already knew that, but thank you for telling me and giving me the regulation. But now I know I need to go back. Do we have proper electrical wiring there? if I had also told this, hey, this is in a flammable atmosphere, that image, unless you prompt AI and say, this image is taken within a flammable or a combustible atmosphere, please assess the hazards, it would then provide you context around flammable liquids and, you know, everything related to that. But if you don't prompt it correctly, it's not going to tell you that. In this case, it was just water, but if that had been a flammable liquid, what I would need to do is go back in and say, oh, by the way, that's a flammable liquid in that bath. What hazards exist? And then it would kick back some information around electrical and flammable liquid storage, and some additional items there. We all have those little grinding wheels. So again, easy assessment. Most people have those issues not having the work rests or tongue guards in the right place. So being able to do this in seconds is the point here. It's giving me all sorts of things to consider in my safety audit. Why is this, why is this important? Well, I don't want to spend my time just looking for hazards and kind of being in that reactive mode. I want to spend my time, my area of kind of passion is culture and engagement. Where we've been using some of this AI with employees, it's actually been pretty fun. People really like this, and it's accessible and tangible, and you can get information real time instead of, oh, I'm taking photos and then I'm going to go back to my desk and I'm going to generate a report, and then the employee never sees or hears anything about it. With the use of AI, you can actually engage people in real time. You can take these photos, it can analyze, you can take the videos, it can analyze, and you can have a conversation right then and there with your employees about what the issue is and how might we correct this. I also want to be doing things more proactive. So when this is telling me, hey, these hazards exist, let's just go work on the proactive side of this now instead of wasting hours on, getting the right people involved and generating a report and asking for the corrective actions. Let's spend less time doing that and more time actually doing out on the floor and getting things done. So I talked about, content development. So not just hazards, but we're coming up on hot seasons here. So I give it an image. This is just a stock image I pulled offline, and it was, clearly these guys are outside. It looks like they're hot. So I asked it, tell me what we can do here around heat stress and the hazards these guys might be facing. So it's giving me kind of a risk assessment and some potential control measures for the heat stress, for dehydration, and exposure to the sun. This is going to be pretty critical, I think, as we move forward. Heat stress, as you know, is a national emphasis program. Cal OSHA is starting to come out with some guidelines around heat stress, so very likely the rest of the world is going to be following. What's going to be in that regulation? Well, you're going to have a written program. There's going to be a training content to it. There is talk about having specific triggers at certain temperatures. I know there's some pushback from industry to OSHA on that because depending on your region, those triggers could be different. In Michigan, our thresholds are probably going to be different than Texas. So all of that to say, this type of technology can help you create training content, write your heat stress management plan. Is it going to have everything exactly correct? No. Again, it still needs you to tailor this specifically to your industry. Next version of this type of technology, you're going to be able to upload your own organizational documents and ask it to pull information specifically from your company documents, whether that's one location or 50 locations. You're going to be able to query this type of system to pull information from all those documents and look, what if, I don't know, a site of yours 500 miles away had an OSHA inspection or some sort of internal audit, and it identified a few hazards. Well, you may not know that in your facility, but if you ask this AI tool, hey, query all of our sites and find out where we've had, heat stress issues or lockout issues, it's going to be able to pull that for you, as well as tell you, hey, here's what happened. We found this issue. This was the corrective action. This is how long it took to mitigate that hazard. It's going to be able to tell you all of that information within seconds. So looking at how we can use this efficiently. On the MSD side, injury prevention, those strain sprains type of injuries, I do a ton of ergonomic evaluations. I have for my whole career. The easier ones take at least an hour. You have to get the measurements, you have to do the calculations, you have to generate a report. Oftentimes you're taking photos or videos, and then in the old days, going back to your computer and trying to measure everything out just right so that you have accurate measurements. Whenever I do an assessment, my laptop's out on the floor, my phone's on the floor, I got my tape measure. It's all time and it's all tools, and I have to travel somewhere. So there's an economic impact to all of that, as well as just time. So those more complex ergo evaluations, I mean, they can take a few hours. There's technology out there now where this is done in seconds. There's tons of different ergo eval apps out there now that you just take a video and it analyzes this for you within seconds. It gives you the angle of movements for all of the body parts. There's a couple out there now that are doing wrist calculations as well, although you kind of have to question accuracy of those. So I would suggest double checking and not just trusting it. But that's all out there for you, and it's done within seconds. You may then need to, kick out the report, but the analysis side, it's done. You don't need to do it anymore. At times, you still have to do some manual entry. If you want to get like the NIOSH lifting equation, you might have to enter in a couple of data points there, but everything else is automatically calculated. The other thing, I brought this just if you wanted to mess around with these devices today, but these are one form of wearable technologies. So this little device, when it's worn either on the spine for back movements, or there's like a little arm strap, you clip it in and you wear it here, it measures shoulder movements. And what this type of wearable technology does is it actually gathers information. And Soder's technology gives real-time feedback as well. Most other wearables, it's data collection and it feeds it to a dashboard so that you can see that information. Why is that cool? Well, on the data collection side, what happens when we go do an ergo assessment in the field? I'm out there and I'm taking pictures of Zach as he's working. What is Zach going to do? Oh yeah, all of a sudden Zach's lifting properly and he's no longer the speed demon. He's moving at a slower pace. They change behaviors. And so when you're out there doing your own ergo eval, a couple of problems that come up are behavior changes, and I'm just seeing a sliver of time. I'm not seeing what the full day looks like. I'm not seeing what the entire week looks like. I'm just getting 5-10 minutes of his time. So how accurate is that? It's questionable. And you have to use some judgment there. The wearables, though, especially when they're not giving feedback, you're getting a ton of data points. Now I'm really starting to understand, oh, he's lifting this many times per hour, or he's bending or twisting, or he's doing, this many overhead reaches per hour. And you can collect that for multiple days. So now I have big picture information to work from in order to make decisions. So what I often do is we'll deploy wearables first and collect that information, use the dashboard to now determine, okay, we need to start in this area because we're seeing the most risk within this particular department or this particular job role. For Soder's technology, the first day that somebody wears it, it doesn't give any feedback at all. That's the day we love because that's the accurate picture of what somebody does when they're working. On day 2, it starts to give real-time feedback. What does that mean? It's a beep and a vibration. So every time the person does a hazardous movement, so bending, twisting of the spine, the overhead reaching, this device gives them the real-time feedback. It's called haptic feedback. And what that does is changes behavior. And so each time they do those hazardous movements, they get the cue, oh, that just put you at risk. And they start to change behaviors. How long do people wear these? Usually 10 days. I work with a couple organizations that have you wear it for 20 days, and I work with 2 that require it as continuous wear. So it's part of their PPE. They wear it every single day. I'm questionable on whether that's going to be a good thing or not. But this particular company is huge and they're insisting. So I'll let you know in about a year how effective that turns out to be, because I think it's a great test case. But my concern is that if somebody gets the same feedback day after day after day, and the employer isn't doing anything to correct that, to change that, what is that going to do to your culture? What is that going to do to employee morale? So I'm questioning a bit what that might do to the overall culture. You think about somebody in a warehouse or out in, we do a lot of work in the mining industry. Some of their work cannot change. We can't change the way they're working unless we do some pretty significant overhauls to the way we have warehouse racking systems or the way they're accessing tools out in the field. What good does it do them to get the same beeps over and over and over? So I do question that. But there's some significant value to the use of wearable technology for MSD prevention. I do get asked often about exoskeletons. I think there's a very specific use case for exoskeletons. I think if you're going to use them, it needs to be likely for a specific task and not for a job role as a whole. The feedback we often get is they're uncomfortable, they don't want to share, and when we get into warmer weathers, they don't want to wear these. It's just an additional gear that needs to be worn. It makes them hotter, and as you can imagine, where it connects to their body, it can rub and cause a rash or skin abrasion. So they can be uncomfortable. I do work with some organizations that deploy exoskeletons, but it's a specific use case. So there's like a task that they suggest you wear it. It's a voluntary basis. Nobody has to wear these. But the employees that wear them do enjoy them. And they only do it for this task that takes them about 30 minutes a day. The other thing with exos is you really have to evaluate the exo that you want to use, because it's not a one size fits all. There are some that are geared towards helping with back injury prevention, and there are some that are geared towards shoulders. They're not interchangeable. So you need to be very, you really need to research what it is going to be used for, and if you want active or passive. So some of them actively help with the lifting, and some of them are passive, whereby maybe it's bands instead of a motor that helps lift. So just be conscious if you're going to use those, how you want to use it. Next, yep, thanks, you're there. So the policy review, we talked about this. We can ask this new AI software. You can upload a document, and in this case, I had a confined space policy. And when I first uploaded it, it was actually, there were no issues identified, which I knew because I had already looked at it. But I uploaded it to see what Soder Genius would say, and it came back and said, it's all good. So what I did is I went back into the policy and removed any reference to atmospheric testing and uploaded again and asked, what issues do you find in this policy? And it came back with a whole bunch of things around atmospheric testing. So it identified the regulation, told me what the violation was, and then the actions needed. So again, we talk about that whole policy review. Why do we want to spend hours looking at this? Just ask AI to do it for you. This took maybe 10 seconds for it to come back with this answer. So I would prefer to do this than spend my time reading. This was a 15-page document, so very happy to just upload this and ask for analysis rather than reading 15 pages of information. And you can do this with any policy. Zach, if you'll advance. And then the next use case here is hazard identification. We can all see the issues here, but it's just kind of funny to ask the AI, you know, what violations or hazards do you see in this image? And it went through and described all the hazards posed by this guy doing some hot work near flammable storage. So again, what's the regulation? What's the violation? What action needs to be taken? If I wanted, I could then query this and say, what type of training do I need to do? And it would give me a nice outline for training content. I could ask it, can you be more specific about the PPE that's required? And it will come back and tell me the type of PPE that's needed. We're working on training it so that it can also do different types of risk assessments. So when we're out in the field or within our different organizations and we have to do a risk assessment, that's different than the hazard identification. With the risk assessment, we're actually trying to assess what is the risk that something is going to happen and how severe or significant is the impact going to be. So there's lots of different risk matrices out there. We're training it right now on a couple of different risk analysis tools so that it can also do a risk assessment for you. It will be a report that you'll be able to print out or, turn into a PDF or PowerPoint if you need to share it with somebody, but the AI is going to be able to do some risk analysis for you as well. We can do ergo assessments. So the app I talked about earlier is a standalone app, but you could also just upload an ergo issue into AI and ask it to analyze the issues. So this is a company I've worked with for the last 3 years on and off, literally all over the globe. They make pallets, they repair pallets. And in Sweden and Mexico and Canada and the US, they all do pallet repair a little bit differently. And for whatever reason, as a global company, their communication is not great. So they don't know what they're all doing in these different countries. But all these different countries have asked me to assess the ergonomics of the station. So I'm able to take videos from all these different sites and do an analysis from my desk in Michigan and compare all of the different types of pallet repair that they're doing and let them know which one presents the least amount of risk. The other way we've used this, which is, much better in my opinion, is we're looking at different engineering controls. So for this particular example, they're using a pry bar to pry off damaged boards. Well, as you can imagine, they have a lot of elbow injuries because of the force and just the repetition required. Well, at another facility, they have something called a board remover. And what do you know? You just push the pallet towards a little tool and it actually pops the board off for you. At another facility, they actually created their own internal tool, which was just an air actuated device. You put it underneath the board, you use a foot pedal and it pops the board off. again, there's no communication amongst all these sites, but we look at these different tools. And what I was able to do is look at the risk of each of these, but also I did a time study for them. Because I had this video, I could now tell them, okay, this one's going to be a lot faster. And perhaps it doesn't reduce the risk as much as the other, but it's going to be 10 seconds faster. Well, from a production standpoint, that's what they're going to want. So just being able to use this type of technology without having to travel, but also you can have multiple different sites sending you information so that you can now do all of these analysis I was able to do within seconds, literally. I still needed to go back and create my own report and an executive summary. But the fact is I didn't have to travel to Mexico. I really wanted to go to Sweden, maybe next time. But, you know, just the effectiveness of this and being able to go quickly, there's something to be said for that. Issues. So what hurdles might you face? I do think, you know, AI has a ton of use cases, and there's no doubt about that. And it can certainly help us be a lot faster at the work that we need to do. I think it's just important that especially younger safety people entering the field, AI shouldn't replace your brain. AI can't necessarily be as creative as we can. It might give us some really good ideas, but we still need our own human ingenuity, our HI, to go out there and implement. AI is great at, you know, analyzing huge data sets and giving us suggestions or recommendations. We still need to be able to use our ability to connect with people to make those suggestions and recommendations come to life. Security and privacy concerns, for sure. That's going to continue to be a top concern for a lot of organizations. Depending on what tech you use, almost all of the video processing softwares out there, you can blur faces and blur backgrounds. So privacy in that standpoint, we can, you know, we can bypass that concern because we can do the blurring. And pretty much all vendors offer that because they recognize people don't necessarily want their faces captured and published anywhere. There's a concern over error propagation and hallucinations within AI. Now, the good thing about Soder Genius and their RAG method is it can't do that because it is using OSHA sources for information. So it is pulling directly from black and white written. It's not pulling from everything that you can find on the internet. So because it's using an authoritative source, we eliminate that error issue. I think when we're using AI, it is great for that quick analysis. It does not express emotion. So when we upload images and get that analysis feedback, it obviously cannot understand how that person might be feeling, and it can't dictate how you're going to respond to that. So again, there's some human touch stuff that comes along with this that you cannot replace with AI. You still need to be able to connect with people, and you still need to use, regardless of what AI is telling you, you still need to use your own interpretations of, if I say this to a person or if I make this change, how is that going to impact somebody? It doesn't understand the culture. So one thing that I caution all organizations, there's always the shiny new tool. All of these things, the wearable technology, the video processing, the AI, it's all evolving quickly. It doesn't mean that your organization is ready to adopt this type of technology. So assessing and understanding technology is going to be important. You need to know if it's the right time to introduce technology. I worked with an organization in Canada. They've had me go to Nova Scotia, then they had me go to Newfoundland, and then they were going to have me go, I think it's somewhere in New Brunswick. It was way north in Canada. dead of winter. It was literally the last week of February and the first week of March that I was traveling, and it was all to introduce technology and launch this new technology at their facility. And I got to the one in New Brunswick after a week and a half of traveling in the frigid temperatures, and they were introducing a new warehouse software system and decided that it wasn't the right time to introduce this technology. So bummer for me to have traveled all of that way in the cold. But it was the right choice. Their warehouse management system that they're introducing actually ended up having tons of tech issues, and it delayed this project by 3 months. But it was absolutely the right choice. So just keeping the pulse on other things that are happening in your organization is really important. Open enrollment time, probably not a good time to try to introduce wearable technology or other technologies. People are preoccupied with other things and probably not going to give you the level of interest you need to make this a success. Other things to consider with the tech. What if you're trying to integrate it with a software platform that you already have? Good question to ask up front. Is this vendor interested in integration, and can they do it? How do they protect data? Where is your data stored? Adaptability, cost structures, obviously an important factor. Usually with hardware, there's typically an upfront fee, then there's a subscription fee. With software, there's usually a licensing fee, and those licensing fees can be per site or they can be per person. That can make a pretty big difference in the overall pricing package. So understanding how they cost things out is important, but also what is that vendor's continuous improvement process? How are they constantly making sure that the information you're getting is the most up to date as possible? When they do software updates, how and when does that happen? And is it free to you? So asking those questions up front, important to the success of your integration. And then lastly, all of this goes quick. What I showed you today and what we talked about today is going to be much different next week. And that's just the nature of AI. It is constantly getting better, and it is moving faster than we can keep up. It doesn't replace the need for us. Can it automate some of the things we do? Yes. And should it? Yes. Let it do a lot of the legwork for you so that we're not spending our time on things that don't necessarily add a ton of value. I would identify the various avenues that you can use AI within your own business and how can you engage employees in that process. I think it's very wise before you introduce any technology to meet with different functional groups within your organization to talk about this type of tech and how you plan to use it. Get their feedback, get their support. They may come to you with some other ideas of how they might want to use it as well. So just creating those functional working groups together will help this tool be successful for you. And then how can you use this with your employees? This shouldn't just be a tool for you. Yes, it can help you be faster at some of the work you do, but is there a way you can use this to enhance your employees' knowledge? Can you put this in the hands of your own employees so that they can do some research on their own? What if they're working at a station and they think, okay, well, I don't think this chain is properly guarded. Why can't they just take a picture and upload it into the software and let the software say, yep, this is a violation, this chain needs to be guarded, and then somehow have a feedback system so that that gets kicked back to maintenance or the safety person. Allowing your employees access to AI will help engage them and get them part of your process. I said earlier, where I've been doing this with employees, it's been fun. I don't think all the time when people think of safety, they think that we're the fun people. But this is a way that you can actually make it fun. With the AI side, we've uploaded some just really stupid, ridiculous photos and just had some laughs about the type of information that AI feeds back to you. Because when you upload I uploaded a picture of me doing a spill response training session, and it was post-session and the guys did a great job. So here I am in my, work slacks and my button-down blouse, and the guys are all in their you know, they're full on PPE because we just did a 55-gallon flammable liquid spill. And they're standing on a loading dock and I'm down there with the shovel in my hand because we just wanted to get a picture. I uploaded into AI and it was like, what in the world is going on here? Because everybody else is in PPE and I'm standing there with no gear on, just in my work slacks, and it just blasted us with all of these violations. So we kind of had a laugh over that, and we shared it with the leadership team, and you know, they thought it was amusing too. But I think there are some fun ways to use this as well, not just the hazard analysis or policy review. You can make this fun with people. I'm leaving time for questions before your tour, and happy if you want to ask Soder Genius any questions. I can pull up the dashboard and we can just blast it with some questions and see what comes up. Or you're welcome to come up here and play with this technology. You can't break it, I promise. So what questions do you have? And Zach, if anybody online has questions, I'm happy to answer. Yeah. Uh-huh.
What is that?
Well, for this safety analysis, the only company doing that right now based on OSHA standards is Soder. So you'd have to reach out to Soder to get that. I know that I don't know the cost of it, Chris. I try not to be involved in that side of it. I'm more about strategy and use cases, but I do know that they're going to have different pricing structures for small to mid-sized businesses versus larger. I also know that they have special setups for insurance. So they're talking with Marsh and Liberty Mutual right now about some partnerships, but I think their use cases with insurance providers is different. So for what that's worth. Rich.
You had mentioned solar does OSHA, so for example, would it do other regulatory bodies, like for example, I might have to find that also.
Yes.
It's in Canada, Ontario or something like that.
Yep. So right now, if you were to query Soder Genius, it will answer based on federal OSHA. Within the next week, maybe 2 weeks, it will be trained on and be able to answer to all of the state plans within the US and then Canadian standards. Probably by mid-June, it will be able to answer to anything in the European Union, and then Australia will follow.
Okay, so you're talking like NEBOSH or
Yes.
safety executive.
Yep, and any EU specific regulations or guidance documents, it will be trained on all of that. Chris, did you have another question? You said you had two. Okay.
So I don't think I'm talking about the launch of the subject last thousands and thousands now. AI is pretty much endless since how we use it. I mean, I was looking at that myself. Instead of the individual safety person, other stuff out there that we can utilize or start to learn about.
For like the basics of AI or AI like tools that you could use for, okay. Yes and no. I mean, you could go to OpenAI, but the problem is it will search for anything that's on the internet. So if there's garbage on the internet, you're going to get garbage as part of your response. In terms of specifically geared towards OSHA standards, no, right now Soder is the only one. I'm sure now that Soder's made it public, other people are going to follow. But right now Soder is the only one that can do it based on RAG and based on OSHA standards. Rich.
I can see this tool being very useful for multinational companies.
Oh, yeah.
World-class manufacturing companies, that type of thing. For example, where Chris and I, and maybe even James Winters works, we work with middle markets,
Yeah.
smaller companies, anything under 300 employees typically.
Yeah.
And they're always asking,
Mm-hmm.
questions like what Solar Genius could do.
Yeah.
But then when they see the price, they don't want to pay for it. Or they're at the verge of, well, we can almost justify a safety professional, or we could do this. And the people that really make the decisions isn't necessarily somebody that's doing safety, it's CFO or
Yeah.
analyst. They're not gonna get into all these details. They're just gonna look at the numbers and say, look, it's one or the other, you can't have both. If we have this, you're gonna have to
Right.
find another job kind of thing.
Yep.
So I think this is all good stuff, but I think also that until some of the price on some of this stuff comes down, and I think the more users you have, economies of scale, I think that's.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know what the pricing will be for Genius. I know with the video processing software they had, it only, it was only geared towards ergo analysis. I think small to mid-sized companies would pay maybe $1,000 a month. So if you're doing a fair amount of ergo stuff, or you have some costly ergo injuries, like that's a quick return on investment. I don't know what Genius is going to cost though. I don't think it's probably as much as you might imagine. I think it's going to be less.
You single site safety people, and it wasn't absorbed. I mean, think about how much time you sit writing reports for the carriers, sit writing reports out there. Basically, you can generate a lot of data from that and just put your human time on it.
Yeah.
Not regulation.
Yep.
I would love.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
Anything else, guys?
Yeah. Zach had a
Well,
question.
solar, encompass like an environmental standpoint, like reference EPA and the Eagle at some point.
Oh, so they started to,
Okay.
and I put a stop to it. Because I think when you so initially when your scope gets too big, I feel like you're gonna fail. Just focus on one thing and make that like amazing before you open up the world of crazy complex environmental regulations. I'm a little leery on the environmental side because, as you know, there are so many loopholes and so many nuances and caveats and if this, then that, but if you do this, then there's this. I'm a little concerned that it could not pull all the right information. Is it a possibility? Yes, I think it's probably going to happen later this year. We'll need some test cases though, so I'll be in touch. Everybody, like right now, Solar Genius is, all of Solar's clients are using it and it's in beta testing. It's opening up to the general public in about 2 weeks. So when we talk about the environmental side, we need to do beta testing. So we'll be reaching out to people to beta test the product to make sure it's providing the right feedback. And it's all about testing it. So that's why I said I do a ton of testing. I'm uploading images or video analysis. I'm querying and I'm asking multiple different questions in different ways to make sure that it's giving the right answers. And then there's like 50 data scientists behind this as well doing the same thing. So yeah. Yeah, Rich.
Yeah, I do a lot of property risk engineering analysis. For example, sprinkler systems, that type of thing. And I do spend a lot of time. If I can cut my time, that would be a big plus right there.
Mm.
So for example, if I took a picture of a warehouse, right?
Yeah.
Is that going to be able to, or is solar even looking at that possibility in terms of, all right, now I've got the hydraulic schematics, the design on it. I've got the sprinkler heads, I've got the height of the to the ceiling and that type of thing. And so now, is it going to be able to tell me, all right, you meet NFPA 13, you meet NFPA 72, you know, all those other NFPA standards that's applicable to it? Or am I still going to have to have that human intervention and do other things with it?
Didn't I send you an email and ask for a meeting?
Okay.
Let's talk.
Okay.
A couple of things though. I don't know what the licensing is around NFPA standards. So when I think about ANSI, when I buy an ANSI standard, it's licensed just to me. So I think we're going to have some issues around training this model in terms of copyright. So we're probably going to have conversations with those actual agencies and organizations to understand if we purchase this standard, can we then use it to train this model and make it available to everybody? Because now, you know what I mean? Like somebody could just choose to use Soder Genius instead of purchasing from ANSI. So I think we may have some issues around actually being able to use NFPA and ANSI documents. Right now, if it's referenced within OSHA or any OSHA letters of interpretation, if it says something about NFPA or ANSI, Soder Genius will tell you and give you a link to that specific standard, the ANSI standard or whatever. But right now we can't train it on that because of the copyright issues. So again, I put a stop to Soder doing that because I'm like, that's not going to be ethical and we need to have other conversations around how we use this info. So I don't know yet, Rich. I'm not sure if that's going to be a possibility. Right now, it's just doing pictures. Probably within the next few weeks, it'll be able to do video. But you know, the video analysis takes a lot more information for it to analyze. And oddly enough, there's a cost to the analysis of an image and a video, and the cost to analyze a video is a bit more.
Does it matter the paying?
No. No, and it's gonna go pixel by pixel in your image or your video, so it doesn't matter the angle.
So if it goes pixel by pixel, let's say I'm taking a picture of somebody that's welding, like you had in your picture, right? Or
Yeah.
grinding.
Yeah.
Is it gonna tell me that you're wearing the correct shade?
Ooh, I don't know if maybe then it would depend on the angle, because like the image I showed, it was kind of from behind and off to the side. There's no way it could tell the shade. It can tell you though, it will reference PPE and probably direct you right to that shade chart. Yeah. Well, for the average iPhone user, like that's good enough. We don't have to get into super high pixelated images. Would it be better? Maybe. But it's pretty good at reading pictures. I mean, you saw some of the images. We just pulled a couple of those were stock images, and when you pull them, they get a bit grainy. It still read it just fine.
All right, we have a question online. It says, for topics that don't have a standard yet, will it outline best management practices for a program?
As long as there's, okay, like there's national emphasis programs, there's those letters of interpretation. As long as OSHA has written something on it in the past, whether it's a standard or not, yes, it will pull from that and give you guidance. So for example, if I asked it about heat stress, because we don't have an official standard on that yet, there's tons of information out there from OSHA around heat stress, and it can pull best management practices. It can give you an outline for a policy. It can give you an outline for training content. And it can do all of that simply from a query or a picture that you upload.
And also, does it cross-reference NESC and NEC?
It will, as long as there was some sort of reference in OSHA. So the answer is yes. But same thing as ANSI and NFPA, it will send you to the link for that specific standard or citation under NEC.
Amazing. So it's safety, we're used to changes happening slow. Talk about standard getting updated or standards, something
Like,
once or years.
right,
And then you keep talking about, well, this is gonna change, this is gonna happen next week.
yeah,
Weeks.
Yep.
It's just,
yep,
it's mind blowing how fast
yes,
the advancement is happening.
yeah, that is the beauty or curse of AI. It moves quickly, and we'll definitely move at warp speed compared to the US government. Okay, cool.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Um, everybody's typing, so I think you can put the next. See you guys. All right, if you're looking for continuing education, whether you're online or in person, if you're online, you got to do it here. You can't go back and watch the recording. So this would be your link to sign up and get your continuing education credits. Cool. I think beyond that, I have to admit, my mind's just kind of spinning with everything that you talked about, how to apply it to safety and I've had some of the carriers that use the video for the ergonomics, and I thought that was the greatest thing, but that's just a small piece of what's out there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
the funny thing about this AI tool, in January,